Hey, welcome back to another episode of Hipster Codes. This is Hipster George Washington, Hipster GW. So the last couple of videos I've been going over different ways to have your UI update. One video we did it through binding. Video we did it through event dispatches. Now I want to show one other additional one that I don't use as often, but you can actually set something to a timer. So it's would essentially be very similar to binding your UI, at least in functionality. But efficiency, you'll get a significant less of a hit because you can have your timer run essentially as often as you want. And so the video that I went over, I think in the last video, I went over some footage from The Witcher 3. And if you see here in this video, you see as the Witcher is riding on his horse, trying to get to his objective, the location or the distance in the top right corner is updating. It's not updating every frame. Remember, usually most games are going to run at 30 to 100 frames a second, so it's only updating a couple times a second, which is plenty fast for most human brains to comprehend. However, it's not taking nearly as much of a hit that it has to update the UI every frame, but also they're probably not running the distance to function every frame. That's getting the actual distance between the location of the Witcher, of Geralt, and the location of his objective. So they're probably only running that a few times a second. So you'll see it's updating quite often, but not every frame. So they save a lot of efficiency here with the UI. So I wanted to show a way to be able to do that. And so here in this project that I've been working in for several weeks, I'm going to ignore most of the code, but you'll see what I've updated before the video started is I added this distance to function, or this distance to UI here in the top right corner. And what you'll see is we're getting the distance between the first person and Mr. Bob Boberson here. And you'll see as I go away, the distance in meters goes further away and it's updating, but it's updating very quickly. And this is running every frame. Now, the way that I have it running every frame is I'm literally binding it. We went over binding your UI to get the output every frame. Where's my bind function? It's right here, get distance to. Until you'll see every frame, I'm grabbing my first person character. I created a function there that gives you the distance between the first person character and Bob Boberson. It just gives you a float. I divide that float by 100. I'm pretty sure that you get centimeters as the distance, so it seems to be pretty accurate. I turn that into some text, and then I format some text, say distance to, and then meters, and then I return the text. So if we didn't want this to run every frame, but say every third frame, or every, let's say, third of a second, what we can do is create a timer. I'm going to go back to this event graph. So this tutorial, you're not really going to be following necessarily like 100% along in this if you want to, but because your project's going to be completely different, I'm just trying to go over the concept here. Before I started the video, I wanted to make sure that I could do the code that I'm about to show separately here. So I created a sequence. So the rest of my begin play code happens up front. But what I want to do is I want to create a timer. And so I'm going to go off of here, off of my sequence. I'm going to do set timer by, and then you can create a function with a specific function name. If you do that, you have to type in the function name here. And I always thought that was a little weird. You have to actually type in the name as a string. You have to get the name right. So if you miss an underscore or you miss a capital or something like that, you can't actually run it. A lot of people like using more functions. For some reason, just because I like having my event graph here, I like seeing all my events in one place. I like to add events. So we're going to do a timer by event. So we're going to do set timer by event. And we need to create the event still. I'm going to do this little drop down. We don't want any delay to the start. We don't want any delay variance, which I think random. Yeah, it does a random amount of delay. We don't want any delay at all. We just want it running off the bat, but we want it to run every third of a second, and every third of a second, so 0.3 seconds, it will update the UI. But we also want it to be looping so that it continues to run indefinitely. We can also save this timer to a variable, so we're going to save the timer handle, and I'll call it the distance timer handle. Now, I'm not going to show using timer handles here in this video. I'm just doing this for best practice. But if you wanted to turn off and on the timer because you're not locked onto somebody or you're not locked onto an objective, so you don't want to even run this functionality at all, that's what you want to use the timer handle for, so it's not even going to worry about it. So I'm going to come back up and do a create event here. Actually, let's do it right now. So I'm going to go off of here and I'm going to do add event. So we can add a custom event. And it's going to go, excuse me, it's going to go right over here. I'm going to call this custom event distance timer. That's fine. And you know what? Because we're running out of room here, I'm going to disconnect this event here. So if you want to connect events, use these little red squares, but I'm going to drag this bad boy down here. We're going to finish the logic in a second, but we're going to do what we did in the last video where you bind an event, and we're going to do the exact same thing for binding an event to binding a timer event. So we're going to go here and we're going to say create events. And then this lets you I don't like the name of this function. I never thought it made sense because it's really selecting an event, not creating an event. But I guess this allows you to create a matching event if we had some sort of, inputs or something, which you don't with a timer. So it doesn't really make sense. But regardless, we're going to go and select our distance timer here from the dropdown. So I like this as opposed to the function, both because I get to keep the event in my event graph, but also I like to select the more objective dropdown where you get your event in the dropdown list rather than typing your function name arbitrarily. I always thought that was kind of weird. And so now this is going to run our distance timer every third of a second. And so we don't even have to update the UI right now. I'm going to go here and we're going to print the string hello, and you'll see it will run every third of a second. Yep, you see up there. So that's how often in the top left corner, that's how often the event, our distance event, is going to run. Now, if you look in the top right, we haven't disconnected the bind, so we're still getting our distant function running every frame. So I'm going to go over to my designer. I have this little bind here. I'm going to just remove the bind. And so now what we want to do is we want to have this exact same function. I'll even show you the bind. Where'd it go? Where's the bind? We want to run this exact same function. But what it does is it's going to output the text that we want our distance text here to read. And so if we grab this function in our event graph, so I'm going back to this timer event, distance timer. This is running every third of a second. Let's grab the distance to. Well, you know what? This needs to connect to something. What we have to do is grab this as a variable. So I had to click this little checkbox here to make it a variable. So I can now grab the distance to text here as a variable. And I'm going to use the set text function. I'm going to take the output from my get distance to text. Very awesome naming of my variables there. And I'm going to connect them up. And now you're going to see this event is going to run every third of a second. Now, if we go back, you see it's not updating every frame. It's updating, every third of a second, but it still is pretty often. So we really know how far we are away from the guy that we're trying to get to, from our objective, from our Bob Boberson. But if you're saying, hey, look, this is still too janky, not too janky. This is still too choppy, so I want it to run more often. Well, if you want, you could save this to this value here, this time value, to some sort of a variable, or we could just change it here. So if we wanted to cut it in half, we could run it every 0.15 of a second. And look, it's even faster. So that's pretty fast. That's pretty much as fast as you would ever need to, because just like the amount of time it takes to fire a synapse in the human brain. Unless if you're doing some sort of really competitive real-time strategy game or MOBA, where you really had to have this sort of competitive advantage by having your computer run super fast, and then you need to have that additional frame, which is not going to be most games, then I think this is going to get the job done. And you're only running it, instead of 3 times a second, 6, 7 times a second, whatever 0.15 divided by 100 divided by 0.15 is. So you're saving a lot of processing power. It's not really a lot of processing power, but you're still saving a lot of this event being called. So you could make this whatever you want. So that's another way to update your UI. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let me know how you go about updating your UI. This isn't the perfect way to go about it. As you can see with a lot of my code, I'm doing a lot of casts. I'm doing a lot of things that I shouldn't be doing in a real, efficient project that you want to do. But I just try to show off the little cool strategies that I use to actually make my games whenever I make them, whenever I successfully make them. So let me know whatever you think. Let me know however you go about updating your UI. Do you like using timers, binds? Do you just do something else? And hit the like button, hit subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.